A few weeks ago, Denis Jagard, frontman for 10 Foot Pole and touring sound engineer for Jimmy Eat World and Prince, stopped into the backstage as he's touring the acoustic version of 10 Foot Pole around Canada. I had the pleasure of opening up for him, and then afterwards we sat down for this interview. He has a lot of insight about how to build a career as an artist, and I can't wait for you to see that. Before we get to that, if you enjoy what we do here on the podcast, do me a favor, make sure you check out our sponsors. We could not do this if it wasn't for them. We've got links down below for them and Dennis and everybody else here, so you can check all of that stuff out. All right, enough of my rambling. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Denis Jagard. All right. So we are hanging out here at the backstage behind the Players Club, one of my favorite clubs here in the city. I love the sound and stage here. Sitting with Mr. Denis Jagard of 10 Foot Pole. How's it going, man?
Great, thank you.
Thanks for joining me here. We literally both just got off stage. Played here today. You're on tour right now with as an acoustic set.
This is the first ever 10 Foot Pole acoustic tour.
Nice.
Yeah.
We will get into your background in a moment, but I'm actually really interested in how the idea of doing an acoustic tour of your particular style of music comes through, because you kind of got that like power punk sort of like that's what you kind of came up with, right?
Yeah, the 10 Foot Pole basically was a melodic punk band in the 90s. It evolved from a hardcore band in the 80s. Okay. And over the years, I just haven't been able to quit. I just keep wanting to write new songs, and I feel like that I still have something to say, and that the stuff that I'm writing, people still seem to like.
Right.
And so it's kind of encouraged me and got me to do it more. And yeah.
But the acoustic version of it is like something. Was that an artist choice, or was it like sort of was it a necessity?
That was
thing?
a necessity.
Yeah?
Well, it was something that I tried and I love.
Okay.
But basically, I'm a touring sound engineer, and I spend a lot of time touring around the world with different artists, and I'm alone a lot.
Right.
And so once I realized that an acoustic guitar sounds beautiful and that the songs sound good if I play them folky, slower, whatever, and have fun with it, once I realized that, I just started doing it, and then slowly I crept out into the public, and I didn't know if people would like acoustic versions of my band at first, because it was like, well, the songs are pretty simple, but then every time I did it, there was some kind of little reward I got, some kind of little pat on the back, and sometimes it was just brutal, right? But it was just enough to make me think, well, I'm glad I did this. Like sometimes because I'd be on tour with a band and I would play across the street in a parking garage or something, and sometimes people would seek me out and go like, oh, I heard you singing and I really liked it. And well, who are you and what are you doing here? And that would make me feel good and give me the courage to kind of step out more, like a little on the sidewalk, and it just, that kind of built into doing actual shows on days off. Well, actually, first I was punishing the audience. So, for example, the band Jimmy Eat World, I've done 500 shows. I've done sound for Jimmy Eat World. Okay. So I'm really comfortable with them, and I'm confident that they know that I take really good care of their sound, enough to where they wouldn't fire me for doing something that might be slightly inappropriate. Depending how the band is, they might not be cool with it. Right. But basically, their fans sit and wait outside all day, and the people who are in the front of the line to get into the venue have been there for hours, and they're bored out of their minds, right? Yeah. So I try to go out there after sound check, if I can, to the front of the line. And I found through trial and error that if I introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Denny, the sound guy, and I'd love to play a song or two for you if it's okay. If I get that consent, and like people will sing along, right? People love it, people smile. Once in a while I'll get people who are like, why is this guy here? I wish he wasn't here. But for the most part, and so that gave me that gave me so much
fucking incredible
reinforcement. And then like that went well. So sometimes I'd start just going through the line and singing, and especially in Canada, there were times when all of a sudden I heard people singing my songs, like from far away. Right. Like one guy comes up to me like, why are you singing 10 Foot Pole songs? And I go, well, I wrote them. Right. And he's like, what?
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You're so, like, you're a guy after my own heart without even realizing it. Like, I got my start as, like, on the streets. Like, that's what I love.
Really?
That. To me, performing like that, like you're doing there, is the most honest form of entertainment there is, because there's no bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? You're out there and you perform.
Yeah.
They either like you, they don't like you, or they move on. But there's no blurred lines there. You perform and you do what you're doing, and the audience will let you fucking know if they're in or not.
Yeah. They'll be walking by and they'll just stop. And I'm not sure, maybe it's kind of cheating to utilize the I'm with this band and people are like, they love the band, so they're like, oh well, we'll give the sound guy the time of day. When I didn't introduce myself, I imagine that people might think, oh, who's this creepy guy just here, or why is he there, or why is he lurking in the bushes singing or whatever. But still, it just was a lower percentage.
Yeah.
So when I was the creepy loner, like, why is that guy singing out there? He looks like,
You were still getting the reaction, just not
some
as
reaction.
much.
And it's interesting because I found there were little tricks I could do. Like if I sang really loud and held a note for a long time, people would be like, oh, he really can sing. And it's all like, oh, okay, well, you like that, I'll do that, or. But once I introduced myself, and then it was more like,
but that's all
80% of the people would like it. Like the people at the front of a Jimmy Eat World line, it's like 80%. People are smiling and clapping and singing along. I did it in South America, and there were hundreds of people.
Oh, that must have been cool.
That was one of the first times that these people were, I think it was Buenos Aires, were just standing outside, and they looked so bored, and I was inside warming up, and I was like, you know what, it's South America, I'm probably never going to see these people again. The worst that can happen is they can just taunt me.
Right.
And I went outside, and I said, oh, if you guys wouldn't mind singing. And I utilized the guy who had been watching me inside, and he was enjoying it. So I was like, he's enjoying it. I came out, and I go, okay, now you sing I Don't Want to Go. And so I sang the song, and it was kind of like, I don't want to go. Literally 200 people go, I don't want to go.
That's awesome.
They'd never seen me before, didn't know the song.
Oh,
and we're
that's
just like,
so cool.
And that kind of thing happened, and it just turned it around to like, well, there's potential here. Like, I shouldn't be totally embarrassed and just staying in the closet. I should come out and go okay, here we go. People might enjoy this.
It's so funny that you said that it almost feels like cheating using, the tour and that kind of thing. Because the whole that whole process of street performance and the busking sort of thing, almost 75% of the art there has nothing to do with the performance. It has to do with engaging the audience. And any tool that you can use in that situation is fair game. That's the entire fucking game. It's just finding out because the audience doesn't need, those people walking back and forth, the people that keep walking through, most of them are digging what you're doing too. They're just too embarrassed to stop. All they need is an excuse for that engagement. To me, that's why when you walk out and say, hey, I'm the sound guy, without trying to be pejorative, when you go out there and they don't know you're the sound guy, the first thing they think is, who's this fucking homeless motherfucker trying to, this whatever. It's the first thing they think of. I know when I've played on the streets, people have handed me money thinking I'm homeless. I don't care. I'm out there performing and playing. I know most of the money that came from that was from the playing. That's all I really care about.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, though. I'll take that to heart, that there could be other tricks of how to get people to just stop and listen and engage. I mean, one thing I did, I guess naturally I came by it, is I printed up little pics with the band name, 10-foot pole.
Right.
And so that if someone even seemed slightly interested, I said, do you want to pick? And that seemed to catch their attention for a minute. And, some people can't be bothered, but like you said, some people were just a little shy. And the fact that I was being nice and giving them something, I wasn't asking for something and demanding or anything. I was just like, oh, hey, if you like this, here's a thing to remember me by. And I felt like that worked really well with the Jimmy Eat World audience too, because I knew they were about to go inside and see an amazing concert.
Right.
Like Jimmy Eat World's just a great band. I'm a great sound engineer, if I say so myself. They always sound great. Yeah. And it's a moving thing. If you know them and you like them, their shows are very satisfying. So I don't expect them to remember that guy outside. Right. But when they clean their pockets out the next day, they're going to be what's this? Oh yeah, that guy. Well, maybe I'll Google it. What is this 10-foot pole thing? And that's all, if
it's just solid
if the songs
marketing.
are good, then they check it out, and the whole goal is just get them to listen to a song.
100%.
And I feel like, especially with new recordings that we're making, I feel like if they hear it,
it'll bring it to them.
Yeah.
All right, let me bring you back now that we've gone through all of that part of it. Let me bring you back the way we normally start these podcasts. Is we start from the very beginning. I like to know sort of where my guests come from. So give me a little bit of your background. What was the house you grew up in like? Where was it? What was the family structure like? That sort of thing.
Yeah. I grew up in Simi Valley, California, and my mom was a very devout Mormon, and my dad was a defense contractor who on the side dabbled in things like film and sound. His father was a sound engineer, president of the union, and like basically ran the union out of his house of stagehands.
So you have entertainment in your blood.
Yeah. I would say I don't know about entertainment, but definitely audio and engineering. Like my dad's he literally was a rocket scientist like for a while. Like worked for NASA and it did things like with testing test aircraft and things like that. And had gyroscopes and all kinds of things. Before they had GPS, they had to use gyroscopes to figure out where the guided missiles were going to go. But on the side, he had a film business, and he also dabbled in audio. But we filmed all these football games, like college football or high school football. So on the side, he had all these other projects, and we had all these garage full of speakers that I started connecting. And while he kind of preferred the filming, it was real film before video.
Yeah.
So I filmed high school and college football before I could drive. I was out filming football games, and we would process it, edit the film into offense, defense, kicking reels and stuff. And but I enjoyed the music.
Were you like cutting film?
Yeah. It was like we had like a 1,200 foot spool, and so. Like I enjoyed watching football for a while, and then after a while I was like, you see the same game 3 times because you see it when you film it, and then you see it, and you're like cutting it, winding it, and basically, and it's an all night job too. Like you film it, you take it in, wait for it to develop, and then you split it into offense, defense, and kicking, and deliver it to the coach in the morning. So it's for a kid who's like 12 to 14 years old, whatever I was when I was doing that, it was a lot of responsibility because if the film got exposed to the light,
you're done.
You wrecked it.
Yeah.
And back in those days,
did you ever wreck one?
I didn't. I came close. I had film that came unwound in the spool, and it was like I had it in the dark bag, and then it was it was so close that I took it home to the dark room and got it back in. But there's just things like that. But anyhow, on the side, we did that was the thing he really loved. But he did like audio too. But I really liked audio. Like before he gave me permission, I was hooking up the speakers in the garage and playing like what I thought would really impress the girls down at the bus stop. I was playing like Journey and stuff like.
I was just gonna ask if you knew why you got involved. You just said
squeeze in. Yeah, like it was the 70s,
right?
And I had a garage full of speakers, like massive speakers,
right?
And I had to let everybody know,
right?
It's 8 a.m. and I'm just rocking this stuff. And,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, so my background was kind of an odd thing. So, and my parents ended up having 10 kids, and I was the oldest of 10 kids.
Oh, you did say Mormon?
My mom was Mormon. My dad finally capitulated after 20 years or so. He became a Mormon too.
Really? Okay.
And
so were you raised in the faith? It seems like your dad.
Yeah. My mom was like, we're going, and they got in an argument, and he then we'd walk to church, whatever it took, My mom's hardcore. I mean, she just believes, like she still is, praying for me and letting me know that that's the truth.
It's interesting coming up in, because like Mormonism is a pretty like it's a rigid religion. Like it's not kind of one of the loosey goosey ones. You know what I mean?
Nah.
But coming
it's
up
God's way or the highway.
Right.
It's God's way or the highway to hell.
What's it like growing up? What was it like for you growing up in a house where like you had that rigidity coming from mom's side, but clearly dad was like...
My dad was super strict.
Okay.
So he didn't have the rigidity of the religion thing, but I had to get A's. Okay. You know, it was expected. Like, so I always, just to lower the bar a little, I was okay with an A-. So I got an A- all the way through UC Berkeley. Like, I was a straight A student at UC Berkeley, but a minus was okay. You know, I remember in this chemistry class was super hard, but out of 1,300 points that it took to get an A-, I got like 1303. Like, I did whatever it took to get that A-. And the reality was, school was generally really easy for me, but at Berkeley, to get an A was hard usually. Yeah. Like, it's easy to get a B, at least at that time, but to get an A, like, there was a lot of competition, and it took some effort. And so yeah.
What did you take?
So Dad was real. Rhetoric. I'm a rhetoric major.
Get out of here.
Oh, really?
That's okay. See, I mean, it makes sense because you like with writing and stuff like that. But is that why you took it? Was because it was for writing stuff? Because rhetoric is a very specific line of bullshit. Like, it's
the rhetoric. Well, actually, you could say it's specific, but you could also say it's general.
General.
In the Greek times, they split everything between rhetoric and philosophy.
Right.
And philosophy was a search for truth, which included chemistry, math, the hard sciences, and rhetoric was everything else, which is persuasion and like the social factors.
It ends up coming down pretty much directly to language, though, right?
Well, the way that UC Berkeley defined rhetoric was that every communication effort is basically a triangle between the author, the work, and the audience. So you could define almost anything. You could define the rhetoric of that thing. Okay. And so I evolved into it because I went to school thinking I wanted to fight against tyranny and all these other political reasons of why I went to Berkeley. But I also was
Berkeley.
very
Sorry, it took me a minute to sort of think it's like Berkeley.
Oh, not the music school Berkeley, but UC Berkeley. I went there. The day I visited the campus was the day after the anti-apartheid riots at Berkeley. So there was just smashed glass all over the place, and I was like, "Yeah, this is where I gotta go."
You were one of those kids.
I wanted to because I was raised in Simi Valley, and all the Mormon thing was just very restrictive, I was doing sound for 4th of July shows where just rampant nationalism, like flag waving. People were like, I'm proud to be American because I know I'm free, and everywhere else in the world is Russia, or whatever. Just a very, very narrow scope, and obviously I found hypocrisy within what I was being told, and so I wanted to go places where they saw things from different perspectives, and so I made the choice to go to Berkeley at that point, and then the campus had reached this climax of political activity, and then it like relaxed for like 2 years. There's nothing happened.
While you're there.
Yeah. So I was bored out of my mind, and I learned how to ride motorcycles. I hung out with punk rock bands like Sam I Am, and I had friends in the Mr. T Experience. And,
nice.
And so I tried. So did a little music and dabbled and stuff, but it wasn't. And I studied. I studied.
Which came first for you, punk rock or college? Like, did you find punk?
Oh,
in
no.
college?
I was in punk in junior high.
Oh, okay. And tell me about your experience finding punk rock, because I wasn't aware that 10-Foot Pole had a hardcore background. I wasn't aware of that.
Sure.
So walk me through your history with punk rock, because coming out of California, man, like you're. I mean, I don't know where the relative to Simi Valley in LA is and stuff, but like you're kind of close to
Simi Valley is about 30 minutes from Hollywood, about an hour from downtown LA.
So you're right fucking there.
Yeah, it's a suburb of LA, but it's also between LA and Ventura. So the punk scene that Scared Straight was part of was called Nardcore, which is Oxnard hardcore. Okay. I don't know why Oxnard got to be the name that everyone knew, but it was that was what it was. And so
at least now I know where the Nard from Nardcore came from.
Oxnard.
That one I was spinning on that one for a minute.
Got kicked in the nards or something.
I'm like, this isn't.
Yeah. So I'll back it up just a hair. That around. So I was born in '68.
Okay.
And the first punk show I ever went to wasn't actually through my friends and stuff. It was actually my dad's sound company also had stages, and so we did stages for Black Flag and the Cramps and stuff like that.
Wow!
And
So all right, okay.
One of my favorite stage stories there is at Devonshire Downs, which is now part of the Cal State Northridge campus, but at the time it was this kind of private fairgrounds, and I thought my dad was going to get killed because the punk kids back in 1978 were not just like friendly little harmless skater kids. They were more like, they looked like the Ramones, but darker, like
Drugs
more
of
greasy.
society.
And they were armed, and so my dad takes me in, and we're like midnight at a show, and he starts pulling the risers out while Black Flag's on stage. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, they said it'd be done by it. We're gonna get this thing out of here. Like he was one of those kind of guys. He's just super uptight. They said it would be done. It's gonna be done. That's what the contract says. We're getting this out. And I'm like, Dad, hey, let's go to Denny's and hang out and get a sundae. I'm like, not wanting to see my dad get killed.
Right. That's funny.
But yeah, so that was my introduction to punk, was seeing like that kind of gnarly stuff, and then a bunch of my friends in junior high were into it. So it was through friends.
Yeah.
Like I was the oldest kid in my family, so there wasn't an older brother or something to turn me onto it. I just had friends, and some of it was friends that I played music with. I didn't know how to play music, but I bought a guitar, and they had, Scott, the singer that's a baseball player, had a drum kit. He was the drummer at first, and different guys, we tried to play music, and the easiest music to play was what I was just getting excited about, which was bands like Minor Threat and Fear and 7 Seconds, and I just missed Minor Threat. Like my friends went to the Minor Threat show, and I couldn't be bothered, and then I started getting into it, and I was like, what have I done?
Yeah.
And then they stopped playing. And so close to that. But it took me a while. I had long hair. I liked Black Sabbath and stuff like that. And in fact, I remember a bunch of the stoners, as we called them, had come to beat me up one day because of some other incident that I won't go into. But I had a giant cast on my arm, and it said Crocus real big right here, and I had long hair.
The plant?
And the guys came up, and they're like, we're gonna kick your ass because you're a punker. And I'm like going well, actually, I do like punk because it's fast. They're like, wait, whoa, punk's not fast. Punk sucks. And what is that popcorn machine going on?
No, it's the ice maker.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, I'll try to talk louder in case we're getting a bad signal to
Probably
noise
won't
ratio.
be too bad. So.
But anyhow, so yeah, they're like, whoa, punk's not fast. Punk sucks. And I was like, well, it might suck, you might hate it, but it's definitely fast. They're like, no. And I'm like, no, really, like I could go play you a song. They're like, no.
This was an actual conversation you had?
I'm embellishing a little bit.
Okay.
But yes, I'm standing there, hair parted in the middle, down to about here. Big old thing is like Crocus, Black Sabbath, like just, and there might have been a Fear or Black Flag thing too, but it was definitely like, I was not like the punk kid with a mohawk and I was like, I liked Pink Floyd and Black Sabbath and this stuff, and I was in a punk band.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand what that meant at the time, but I was in a band and we played, and it was, we played parties and we played punk songs and we played MDC covers, and John Wayne was a Nazi and stuff like that. And but yeah, like these guys would not let me play it. And I was like, well, you like accept, like balls to the wall, like accept how that's fast? Well, punk's kind of like that, but no, because they were imagining like Devo.
Right.
When they were thinking
punk.
punk.
Oh, yeah, because in the 80s, there was that weird sort of like where it was punk new wave and yeah.
Yeah, they imagined what, like in a movie, there'd be some guy and he'd be like crashing into people, and they knew there was a kill your mother, kill your father thing with the Fear reference, but I don't know if they'd ever actually heard the real song. Right. They just knew it was like kill your mother, kill your father, Yeah,
that's funny. It's interesting to me because like you grew up because arguably there was like 3 places that punk sort of came up. There's London, New York, and LA. And I mean, to a weird extent, Windsor, Detroit is kind of on that map in sort of these weird sort of ways as well.
Really?
Like Windsor has a very sort of like strange connection to the punk scene. There's some punk bands that come out of here that are connected to, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Legger Lads and the Posers and stuff like that. But those guys are all connected with like the Exploited and those guys.
Neat.
Yeah, and Windsor's got, because like we're kind of like a gutter town. It's you know, factory town, that sort of thing. We've always had that sort of connection, being right across the river from Detroit and all those kind of aspects. But like, you being so close to the hub, like whatever Windsor was, it was definitely not LA. That experience for you, because it gets so, like everything else in fucking art, it gets so like dreamify. I'm getting the wrong words here, but you know what I mean. Like it becomes idealized.
Yeah.
What was it? Do you have a perspective on the reality versus the way people think about the punk scene of the 70s and 80s?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many things, so many aspects I could talk about of it. I can just speak from our experiences. You know, we were kids trying to play music and trying to get girls to notice us, really. Right. Then we ended up playing parties, and I think we got kind of a reputation of those cute little kids that can play, you know, fast, loud music.
Right.
Well, the reason I say that is when I was at Berkeley, there was a couple of older people, and they were like, "Oh, you were at Scared Straight. Like, we used to go see your band in Hollywood at the Café de Grand, like this total crap hole, and they used to have $2 punker night."
Right.
And, you know, you could get into the Café de Grand for $2, and there were all kinds of touring bands and stuff, and so I didn't know that was our reputation. Was it like we were like those like little kids who are adorable because they're like too young to really be in the room, but they're
doing it.
You know, they're doing it, and that was it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That realizing that sort of, because that had to be a moment for you, because before realizing that was the viewpoint, it's punk rock. You kind of probably had to think you were a tough guy a little bit going through that, right? Was there like a oh shit moment for you?
I don't know that I ever felt tough. I guess there was some tough moments. Like I wrestled in junior high, and we like a lot of the guys in my band were, all of them, I guess, were on the wrestling team.
Oh, okay.
So I guess we were, you know, we weren't like the punks that I was talking about that might kill my dad. We were like nice kids who really liked the music, and in fact, one of the first times we played in Hollywood, the singer at the time, Mike, I don't even know if we were called Scared Straight yet. We might have been, but he loved this guy. I can't remember who it was, but it was some guy, like, it wasn't the Germs, but it was somebody like that. It was like an old crusty guy. And Mike, you know, we were 14, and he was punishing this guy. He was like, "Do you know who that is?" Da, da, da. And he was all excited, and we were sitting at a table in the Café de Grand, and he was punishing him like just, you know, like fanboy.
Right.
And the dude just flipped out a switchblade and held it to his neck and said, "You shut the fuck up." So,
holy shit.
So we kind of got over the idea that we were badasses pretty quick. I mean, yeah, we were, you know, like I was strong and a wrestler, and like in the pit, you know, I could hold my own, but the pits in Hollywood were pretty gnarly too. It wasn't like, you know, later on I would go on to have a more friendly crowd and like our shows and stuff where it was more camaraderie and helping each other in the pit. Right. But the Hollywood thing was pretty... Yeah, violent, I guess. Did
you spend any time in like the LA sort of Hollywood, like that Hollywood scene through the 80s there? Like, because it got like you're talking Motley Crue days, you're talking like all of those guys coming through there, right? I mean, punk rock's a different scene, but it's happening at the same time, right?
I think, I wouldn't say that I became like any kind of a regular. I didn't turn 21 till 90, really.
Oh, okay.
You know, I was a kid. So,
I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I did. Before one of our first shows, I went down to Melrose looking for some appropriate punk attire.
Okay.
Because, you know,
I have to go uniform shopping.
Like, we're gonna play a real show. It was I can't remember whether it was we won the Battle of the Bands one time.
Okay.
We beat some band that was like a Journey, like they were actually really fantastic and had fog machines and all this stuff. And for whatever reason, people liked us, and we had a good showing that week. And they were pissed. But you know, like 14-year-old kids. But we were a tight band, and we did rehearse and whatnot. But we had a real show, and I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I just wear jeans and a t-shirt. This can't be enough, you know. And I went to Melrose, and I got some shirt that was like checkered, like pink and black, and it was totally the wrong thing. It was like 80s, you know,
right.
new wave or whatever. In fact, one time I got beat up by a football player who was a senior, and I'm pretty sure that shirt had a lot to do with it. I was wearing that.
I mean,
you know, because he had a big mustache and stuff, and I had never seen a guy in high school with that much facial hair.
I'm not a proponent of violence, but from the sounds of the shirt, I think you deserved it.
Well, all I saw, I thought it was my friend who was at a school dance, and someone pushed me from behind, and I thought it was one of my friends being like, "Hey, silly," and I turned around with a big grin, and
all
I
of a
just
sudden
see this
you're in a
big
fight.
glass ring just coming toward me, and it hit me right in the forehead, and I kind of crouched down to my knees, and I'm looking up, going like, and all I see is like a lot of facial hair and a Letterman's jacket and the camping boots, because he's basically kicking me in the head.
Oh, fuck.
And so it ends up being that this guy was like the captain of the football team, and they had a big loss, and he was very moody, and, you know, and he was just like, I was just kind of like, oh, I don't really know what's going on. You know, I have no idea what the backstory is. Like, I had never seen the guy or met the guy.
Just come out of nowhere.
And eventually he gets tired of kicking. Like I know he doesn't really hurt me at that point. But then we break up, and it's whatever for a while, and then I happen to be out on the back patio and see him again, and he comes walking up, and I literally said, "What was that all about?" And he like punches me right in the mouth, and I had braces at the time, and the braces went through the thing,
sucks.
and so I'm thinking like, this guy is just a complete psycho, like you know, and so for a while I was kind of like living in fear that this guy would just suddenly show up, and because he was a man. You know, I was like a 14, 15-year-old kid, and there was this guy that was like, you know, all bearded out. But long story. I could go on about this stuff.
No. But, I love that stuff, because
it's weird stuff. Yeah.
All of those things sort of inform, and it's funny because I almost, as you were telling the story, I almost jokingly said, "Oh well, of course you grew up in fucking LA. You lived every 1980s like coming of age story.
Yeah.
The jock beat up the punk rock kid, right?"
Yeah.
But that, like for 80s, and even like for me, because I was like new wave punk rock in the 90s, you know what I mean? Like the late, so like 94, 95, that kind of thing. And for us, it was like a lot of that sort of idea, like the jock beating up the punk rock kid, was why we got into the music in the first place. Like we were the outcasts and just kind of like fell into that group. Was that the same for you in this sort of, because it almost seems like you're so inside you couldn't be outside.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I felt like an outcast. I went kind of from group to group, and I just really liked the music.
Okay.
Like I was excited about playing music. I was excited about being in a band and doing things, and it was just something to do. It was something interesting. I liked being busy.
It wasn't the lifestyle for you.
I was like, okay, we'll go to band practice. I'd go to wrestling practice, then go to band practice, then go try to skateboard and break my wrist, and then go do sound for a band because my dad had a sound company and I was doing sound, and so it was constant, like, you know, one thing after the other. And 1985 was our first actual tour. I think I was 16, could just barely drive.
How do you get a tour together at 16?
Because of Nardcore. We had there was an album on Mystic Records, which Mystic was basically a really exploitative label that had these records where they'd have like maybe 30 or 100 bands on it,
right.
and they would just do whatever they could and wouldn't pay anybody anything.
Yep.
And they sold a few records, but they made an album called Nardcore, which was Oxnard Hardcore, and for some reason we got to be in it even though we were from Simi Valley instead of Oxnard.
Right.
And now I think that the reason that we got offered the tour, I don't remember the exact details, but I think what it was my mom had a van. We had a van, and my friends knew that I had a van because I had driven to some shows.
Okay.
So I think the band who was headlining that tour was Ill Repute, and they were thinking we could all go in this van. So they're like, "Hey, ask your mom if we could take the van on tour." And I was like, well, of course I'll ask, but I mean, like, what are the odds my mom's gonna want her van to be like, ridden around the country? Because it was a cross country, like it was a full tour.
Okay.
And the other thing that happened was our singer, he had become a singer by the time, Scott Rudinsky, who was a pro baseball player later and stuff, the famed, and now he's in Pulley. But he started out as our drummer. So he was a good drummer, and Ill Repute asked him to play drums because their drummer couldn't make it. So we got the gig because our singer could play drums and because my mom had a van. And
use whatever bonuses you have, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I had to fly to Denver for the first show because it was after the 4th of July, and 4th of July was the biggest day of the sound company because that's when most American sound companies are busy because everybody's lighting fireworks.
Right.
So I was doing a huge 4th of July show with 15,000 people. I'm a little kid doing sound for it. And then I flew to Denver and met the guys there who had played some shows without me and started that tour. And then went all the way across the country, and then our car and trailer with all our equipment got stolen in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
and then we played one show on borrowed equipment with no distortion on the guitars, which was a story in itself.
And you're a hardcore band at the time.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then
no acoustic guitars on that tour?
No acoustic. I only started playing acoustic guitar about 2 years ago.
No, I know you were,
And I love it. I wish I would have started sooner.
Yeah.
But that tour, I wanted to keep going.
Okay.
I just loved it. I loved being out on the road. I wanted to do it. We played one show on borrowed equipment. We almost were ready to keep going, and then our drummer got his dream job, which was working for Corrosion of Conformity. And he moved. He didn't even come home. He met Corrosion of Conformity and just lived with them on the road. That was it.
Done.
And became, he's a famous artist, kind of famous, Brian Walsby. And he did the cover of Nardcore. He did 7 Seconds, a cover of 7 Seconds. He's done a bunch of stuff. I think he's out with the Melvins a lot. I always see art with him drawing Melvin stuff. I guess he does merch for them. He's basically doing the same thing,
the whole time.
Doing merch, drawing for a band he loves.
It's amazing. Yeah. How much do you think coming up in a community where the entertainment industry and the entertainment business is a thing? California and New York are about the only places in North America where the general public can look at entertainment as an actual business and a pursuable goal. The rest of the rest of North America looks at it like it's what your kids do when they're fucking around in the when they.
If only I had taken that lesson to heart. I thought I was kind of over the 10-foot pole thing. There were times where we got it on hiatus. Around 2006, I started working for Prince, and it was right at the point where the punk rock was just brutalized. And we had been brutalized. We had split with Epitaph Records and really never recovered from that. Brett was in drug rehab, and the guy running the company had a little tiff with me that I wasn't aware that was a real tiff, but for whatever reason, they went from trying to get us to signing an extension of the contract because we had fulfilled our 3-record thing to all of a sudden not offering us the contract, even though we had just played 100 shows and released Insider, which was well received and sold well. But because of a weird personal thing, we suddenly were without the label that we belonged on.
Right.
And it was just brutal. We went to Victory Records and we didn't really fit there. And then the owner of Victory was kind of notoriously strong-arming people and and suddenly dropped us after we already had committed to making the next record. And we're just always
a lot of just dirty record business. Bullshit.
just brutal stuff. And a few things happened like that. We had a great tour lined up, but then the support act, which had been pretty strong, suddenly broke up. Screw 32 was the band, one of them. But a few things like that happened where we things looked like they were going well, and then for 10-foot pole, a huge thing was changing the vocalist. Was Scott, our drummer then singer, was a pro baseball player, and around the time that Rev hit, we were just getting these crazy offers to open for the Offspring in Europe.
Oh, wow.
And the Offspring was in the middle of selling 7 million records, and it was baseball strike. And,
baseball.
And we were
94,
please,
right?
let's just do it until the strike ends. And Scott was kind of well, yeah, but if the strike ends, I got to go back. We can't commit to it. And I understood all that, but the rest of us were kind of well, we got nothing going on. We just want to tour. And Scott was literally a pro baseball player, made millions of dollars, and was a professional baseball player. So eventually we parted ways with him, and then we were going to get a new singer, but I was kind of like, well, what if the new singer bails on us? And at that point, I had been the main songwriter. Okay. And so it just made sense, like, well, we can try out these singers, and I basically sold it to the band too. It was like, we could try out these singers, but I would like to try out, and I need time to kind of build up my thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that the rest of the band ended up agreeing too, that even though at the time I wasn't totally ready to step into the role, compared to other people that they could bring in, I was way more dedicated. Like,
and
I would
more
never
ahead
leave
of the curve
band
already, right?
Well, as a songwriter, but not as a singer. I didn't know if I could scream for 3 hours.
No, but you already know the material. You understand where it's coming from because you're the writer in the first place.
Yeah.
Like the singer has to do all of that work. Like, just understand the song when they're not the writer, right?
Well, we understand that, but from a perspective of the public and people, enough. It was like, there were a couple guys who were named, like who bands recognized from the public would recognize from other bands. Mm-hmm. We thought, well, maybe them. But then it was like, but what if 2 years down the road they bail? Then the band's over. Yeah. We can't have a third. Like how many? Well, I mean, I guess you could. Like Black Flag had many, but at the time we were thinking, how could we be in control of our own destiny and tour as much as we want and make this a real thing? And at the time, we decided, okay, I'll be the singer, and I'll just work my ass off and get good. And it just took me 30 years. I feel like I'm good now. But no, honestly, I feel like I have way more confidence.
Yeah.
And I probably should have taken more time before doing it then, but we were just so excited to go out on the road that, I started and was a little green. Yeah. So we lost some of our fan base due to just changing the singer, of course.
How much, that whole process, especially because you guys have had, in various forms and at different levels each time, you guys have had a lot of ups and downs throughout the whole thing. Not too many in the way of downs. You haven't had like a lot of, like, I mean,
we've had downs. We had a bass player die.
Oh, yeah. I was not aware of that.
Oh, yeah, so that's a pretty big down.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge down. I'm sorry.
He wasn't a long-term member, right. So it wasn't like we'd been friends forever, but he was an active member of the band. And it was a tragic story. He had an enlarged heart, and there had been already, at least, I can't remember the exact thing, but in his family, one of his siblings had already passed away, and another had some other issues, and so at least one of his other siblings had passed away. So anyhow, he got the diagnosis that he was terminal, and he didn't tell anyone because he didn't want his parents to worry. And then, years later he died, but in the meantime, they've figured out ways to deal with enlarged hearts. So if he would have kept going to doctors, they could have prevented his life loss. And so it was just brutal. It was like brutal that it happened, and then brutal the tragedy of knowing that, he had good intentions, but that he had ultimately, had an unnecessary sacrifice. Right. Like, he thought he was doing the right thing, and I think, like, he just didn't go to doctors because he knew they would,
That's terrible.
Yeah, so it was brutal.
Okay, so downs too then, right? So lots of up and downs through the process. How much? Because I know as personally as an artist and through talking with other artists, the downs feel like it's not just shit not going your way, right? It feels like complete failure because everything you put in is everything you are.
Yeah, there's a lot of investment, crazy amounts of investment in a band, and and there's some things where you might pat yourself on the back and go like, we finally made it, and then something else will happen and you'll be like, no, not really. And also the structure, the business structure of the band's super important. Mm-hmm. For the first, whatever it was, 20 years, we were a partnership, and that's just not a great business structure. Basically, all the negative aspects that people say about socialism, you could see in a band where you get like, some people are going to work super hard, and then some people are just going to like lay back and rest off of the work of the other people. There's always some people who are like doing all the work, and then some people who are basically complaining or just like skating by.
Yep.
And then and so you're constantly like trying to shame or humiliate or motivate the people who aren't working to do more, because like, don't you realize if we just all pulled together and did this,
you'd be so much further.
Then the band would, whatever. And instead it's like you work really hard. Maybe you even have a great show. And we would get into, I'll just give you some examples. Like, I'm hyper aware. I'm very empathetic, and I feel like I'm really aware of sometimes when people. I feel like I'm really considerate, maybe over considerate, but I'm pretty aware and sensitive about if people are getting the wrong vibe from us, the wrong thing. And there were times we'd work super hard and there'd be a whole bunch of people at the show, and then someone in the band would say something that I thought would offend or turn off a good portion of the audience. So basically I was put in a position of being the political correct police, being like, dude, you shouldn't say that stuff, because people, like, even if you're joking or being sly about it, over a sound system with people all drunk and half drunk, like, people get offended about things I say that really shouldn't have been offensive. And you said something which was borderline offensive, like if it wasn't outright, like, and that sort of thing would be like just brutal in a partnership where you're like, we worked so hard to get there, and then you're actually turning away fans who came.
It's funny because when it's your thing, when it's your baby, and when you're the one putting all the passion into it, and you see somebody who doesn't necessarily, who it's not their baby, whether for good or other intention, it's frustrating when you're saying about a partnership to not just be able to go, fuck you, I'm done, like, and walk away.
Well, yeah, I've been in the same band since 1983. I'm not good at walking away.
Right.
And I've tried a few other bands here and there, but I've never given up on this band. I've always just kept going, and then it evolved into something that I could work with. The band is no longer an equal partnership. The band is basically my business. And so I lure people to be in the band with me through bribes, but also by being nice to them. And because I'm the boss doesn't mean I could be a jerk, because if I'm a jerk, they're not going to want to play. So I basically lure guys in with saying, no matter what happens, you're going to get paid a certain amount. But at the end of the day, I get to make like the final calls. If there's something like that, like
it's either
the buck stops here, and I do have the authority to choose a different person, or also run the band like a baseball team, to use a baseball metaphor, which is like, if somebody, for example, we have a great guitarist, Keith, who his business did really well, as did mine, and I don't want to, in a partnership, if we had an opportunity, then I would basically humiliate him, shame him, or pressure him into not doing his business and just coming and playing the show that we just got offered. But instead, I go like, that's great. Do your business, make a few bucks, save it, and then when you can play with us, do play.
Come on back.
I'll find another guitar player.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. It's hard. It's hard to train new people. But at the end of the day, I want to support all my friends and bandmates and stuff doing well. And I don't want the band to be something that we have to, I want people to be glad they're there, not that they're like bummed going like, oh, I'm losing money, because if I was out there, I'd make hundreds more dollars in the night. You've
been doing this now for 30 plus years.
Yeah, 1983, however many years that is.
So right? 35 years. You've seen, I'm guessing, well, you've said, fuck, you worked with Prince, but boy, do I have 900 questions about that, because boy, I've heard he's interesting to work with. Very. Worked with Jimmy Eat World, also super interesting. Really interested in all of the, because you've got, there's like a million stories here we could go down. I suppose.
Weird Al Yankovic.
Did you work with Weird Al too?
I just got done 77 shows
now
of
I got a million
his
fucking
non-hits, the ill-advised Vanity Tour, and they played 77 shows of
all his B-sides,
all the other songs.
I would have felt
and it was
love.
So great. Every show was different. Every show they did a different cover song.
Oh my god!
And it was all recorded and put out, streamed on Stitcher. So it was my job to mix the house sound, make sure the PA systems worked and tweak them, make sure it sounded good, but also in charge of the recording to make sure that the recording, I didn't do the final recording, but basically they took the stems that I created and put it together and added audience mics and stuff.
Oh, that's so cool.
But every single day had a different cover song. So, for example, he made up a YouTube thing that was all the cover songs back to back.
Right.
And, you know, like, so all the cues I had and stuff, we only rehearsed it. Like, each one we did the day before, and then that day was, you know, so there's only 2 days per song.
What were you doing? Front of house?
Front of house mixing.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So,
my question I was going to with that, now you're just blowing my fucking mind. Of course, you said Prince. My audience went, ooh. You said Weird Al. I'm like, ee. Anyway. My real question that I was getting to, because we're kind of towards the end of the hour.
Okay.
And I think where we could land on this is in all the things that you've seen, all the different, you've dealt with bands and artists at all kinds of levels. From some of the biggest names there are, and I'm guessing you played with fucking me 10 minutes ago, so that's a hell of a range.
Oh, yeah. The best.
Of all the people that you've seen come and go, do you see a running theme between the ones who stick around?
That's a good question. Maybe we'll have to leave that for a future podcast, because I have a feeling you have some unanswered questions. Maybe we could make this an annual thing, like, you know,
oh, dude, I would
every 2 years, every other year.
I'll do it every 15 minutes with the stories you apparently got, dude.
Got a few.
Yeah.
I think people become successful for different reasons, and people have different strategies, and there's not one working thing that works. Like everybody has a different way of doing it, and sometimes the reason that they're successful has nothing to do with how they do it. It's more just they, you know, lucked into something that's just some kind of magic there or whatever. But there's guys like Dave Grohl that are just super nice and super considerate and, you know, very, very generous. And then there's people that I won't name, but who are kind of the opposite, who are just completely antisocial and mean to people and just brutal. If there's any one thing that I would say, the ones who stick it out and go, it's basically hard work. Yeah. Like nothing in the entertainment industry is just easy. Anyone who's there works a lot. Now, whether they are nice when they work or mean when they work, how they treat their crew, or all these other different factors, there's just no way you could do it without work. Like whether it's the press thing, like right now we're on tour, and instead of driving to the next town, I'm here doing a little press thing. And the reason I'm doing it is because I hope somebody sees this and goes, I'd like to listen to his song and see if it's any good. Yeah. That's why I'm here. It's just, please check out a song. That's about it. And I feel like doing the acoustic thing, there's a few things that I have, and the reason that I do acoustic and the reason that I've got 10 Foot Pole back together and pushing it is that I feel like the songs are good, which most artists do, but more.
You're fucking better.
I'm traveling around the world with other artists, and so I'm already getting to travel around. Yeah. So that's like a little advantage that I could use to myself. 2, I'm a nice guy, and I feel like if I'm already traveling around and I play little shows and I'm nice to people, that's already going to buy me like more goodwill than. Because a lot of people really like somebody's music, and then they meet them and they're like, wow, what a dick. Yeah. What a dick. I hate that guy. Whatever. Yeah. And so I feel like if I keep doing what I'm doing, just playing my acoustic songs, I'm going down this path, I hope that eventually I get enough people that like what I do that I could just go tour anywhere, and that enough people would show up that I could pay the cost of doing that and make it a sustainable venture. But I feel like that also supports the punk band, the full band, whatever. I don't know if it's really punk anymore, but it's, you know, aggressive music, and they basically both promote each other. And if I write a great punk album, which I'm halfway done right now, paying for out of my own pocket, and hoping that people subscribe to Patreon and give a few bucks to try to have ongoing music be created. But just if you go to 10footpole.com, there's a few links there. But if that album's great, which it's gonna be, and that's what, like this, all this stuff, this is just a setup, hoping that people listen to that. Yeah. When they listen to that, they're gonna be like, oh my God. And I hope that I meet enough people on this tour that if they listen to it and they like it, they don't go, well, I bet those guys are dicks. They're gonna go like, no, that guy was cool. Yeah. He was nice.
And it's, again, an open door.
Yeah, and it supports it. And then if they like that, they're gonna be like, well, I wonder what that would sound like acoustic. And then comes the acoustic record. And then because the full band with all the noise and guitars and drums is powerful and it's great and it's a visceral, but it's not that same soul of like a vocal and an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And if you're in a room with me, if people really like the band and we're in a room together and I'm singing right there, like it's just a different thing. The soul is laid out and it's like, it's different. It's
I get you.
More real.
If you're an artist or a musician sitting back watching this on YouTube, go back a little bit and re-listen to what he just said, because he just gave you a masterclass on how to be a working artist. Dennis, thank you so much for joining me. I hope we'll do it again.
Yeah.
It was so much fun playing with you, dude.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you next time. All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of the AVB Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go down and click on the subscribe button to make sure that you can continue seeing our episodes as we put them out. We do a lot of videos, and there's a couple of them here that we hope you'll enjoy. There's one up there that we think you might like, and of course, there's one of our playlists down there for you. Make sure you say hello to some of our sponsors in the links down below while you're there, and of course, you can find links there to today's guest and all of our other social media. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.